Welcome, fellow humans. Today, I want to talk about my lack of habits. To be precise, I don't seem to have complex unconscious habits. I do have a whole variety of conscious habits, and I'm going to make the distinction between procedural memory, routines, and unconscious habits. The word habit is used kind of broadly, and it can refer to both conscious and unconscious habits. But there's this weird special thing that a lot of people do where if they do something regularly, they do it often, then they automate it and they start doing it without really thinking about it. And I mostly don't do that. So, first, I need to talk about procedural memory because I do have what is probably a fairly typical procedural memory. Procedural memory is your memory for physical activities. A common example is how to ride a bicycle. So you learn how to ride a bicycle, you might have a little trouble at first, but then once you have it, you remember how to do it and you get to just do that each time. You aren't figuring out how to ride a bicycle each time. And you will get to a point where you're riding a bicycle without thinking about it, and then you can focus more on other things. I can do that. I have learned how to ride a bicycle. I learned how to walk as a toddler, and I don't give a lot of thought to how I actually have to move my legs in order to make that happen. I am able to think about other things while I am still walking around. So that's all fairly normal. And then there are, of course, routines. A routine is anything that you regularly do. And I do have various routines because they are practical. If you've worked out a sensible way to get something done, then why mess with it? There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. But for me, routines are very conscious things. They're things I am aware of, and I am choosing to go through the routine, and I have to remember the steps. It is possible for me to mess up a routine I've done many times before if I get careless and forget something. I assume that's possible for other people too. This is why checklists are fantastic as safety mechanisms. One of the cheapest, most effective things that people can do in various circumstances. But that's not really the point. We're going to talk about habits. So, other people talk about doing something regularly and then not having to think about it. And that once you form a habit, it's really easy to keep doing it and it's hard to break habits. And I can't relate to any of that because that's just not how I work. When I'm doing something regularly, I still have to think it through for most things. There are some very, very simple things I can do unconsciously. One of the ones I've noticed is that I will go to turn off the bathroom light as I'm leaving the bathroom without really thinking about it. And I've noticed this because sometimes the bathroom light isn't on and I'm still going to turn it off, and then I go, oh, wait, I must just be doing that unconsciously. So I've managed to automate little things like that. But other people talk about automating really complex things. Like, I've heard people talk about being able to shower without thinking through every step. And I've never done that in my life. Every time I shower, I am thinking through every step that I want to take, the order I want to take it in, and usually also thinking about why I want to do it in that order, which really isn't necessary because I already know that information, but my brain will provide it every time anyway. And I think this is part of why a lot of tasks are more annoying for me, because other people apparently just shut off their brain and do the thing and then it's done without having to work through it themselves, whereas I have to commit to consciously taking a shower when that is a really boring thing to do. I still do it because I know I need to. There are a lot of things in life like that, and a lot of them that I do even though I'm stuck doing them consciously every single time. The downside to not forming habits is that I'm probably less efficient at a lot of things, and I obviously have to be bored. I have this unpleasant experience for a lot of things that other people are able to automate, and I think it's probably on the whole better if you can form habits, but there is an upside. Because I can't form habits, even good ones, I also can't form bad habits. I can make bad choices. I've done that many times. I can tell myself that I'm just going to read one chapter before I go to sleep, and when I get to the end of the chapter, I'm not going to have the experience where I go, oh, but I can't leave the story at this point. I have to just find out how this happens. I'll just read a little bit more until I find out how this happens, and I'm not going to push myself to read for way too late and sabotage my sleep, even though I have repeatedly done this in the past and I am lying to myself. So that's not a bad habit so much as it's a bad choice. I mean, you might call it a bad habit, but I'm doing it very consciously each time that I make that bad choice. Other people talk about bad habits like when they're biting their nails and they don't want to do it, and how they have to make themselves notice when they're biting their nails. And I'm not capable of that. I've never bit my nails without noticing and being consciously aware that I've chosen to do it. I can't eat or drink things without making a conscious choice about that and being aware of it. Apparently, there's this whole thing about mindful eating and how that's great, and it's like, I don't have a choice. I have to eat mindfully every time I eat because I have no other method for doing it. So, if I want to make a change in my routines, if I want to change my lifestyle, I don't have any difficulty breaking a bad habit beyond the inherent do I really want it enough? That's my problem with reading. I tell myself I want to sleep, but I want to keep reading too much, and so I'm as susceptible to temptation as anybody when I want to make life changes, but I'm not going to accidentally fall back into a bad habit. I'm not going to find myself doing the bad habit when I didn't mean to. And if I decide I want to change a routine, it's also relatively easy for me. Whereas I think it would be harder for others because it would break their automation of that routine. An example of this is for a while I used to brush my teeth and then I would floss. And that made more sense to me because I figured if I'm brushing my teeth, I might brush something into like in between the teeth, and I want to make sure that I flossed it out before I go to bed. And then I was watching a YouTube video with dentists answering questions, and they were asked, is it better to floss before or after you brush your teeth? And the answer was, nobody really knows. It hasn't really been studied. There's probably not a big enough difference for it to matter. But both of the dentists agreed that they floss before they brush, and that made more sense to them. And I decided, with basically no evidence, the intuition of a dentist is probably better than my intuition on a dental matter, so I might as well just floss before I brush because why not? I mean, it doesn't really make a difference. And if there's any chance it might be slightly better, sure, I'll do that. So I switched from brushing and then flossing to flossing and then brushing, and that was all it took, was deciding to do it. And then from then on out, I just did it that way. There was no difficulty. There was no loss of automation because I didn't have that in the first place. So it gives me this adaptability, but at the cost of mind numbing routines that I have to keep going through, and having to put more work into so many mundane parts of daily life that other people are able to just turn off for. At least as far as they tell me. And I do believe them because there's a big thing in the field of psychology where people have often been unwilling to accept that the differences between them and other people were real, and they thought that other people were just speaking metaphorically or confused about what they were saying. And I try to be really mindful of that and accept that when other people tell me that their lived experience works this way, that it probably does. So even though it's super strange to me, this idea that other people are able to get things done without consciously thinking them through, even if they're not even if there's still some thought to it and they're just trying to explain how they don't have to put much into it, there's clearly some difference there between the way they experience doing these common things that they have habits for and the way it works for me. I don't think that other people have just made this up to trick me. Anyway, that's my story, and if you liked it, please click like, and if you'd like more similar content, then subscribe. If you know someone who might find it interesting, then by all means share. But most of all, if you have any questions or thoughts, similar experiences, contrasting experiences, I would love to read your comments. Thank you.